Yeah, good morning. Welcome on the topic on corporate governance and overview. You might all be aware that corporate governance has become the order of the day, especially in terms of when a lot of corporate scams are happening. You might have heard about the scams which are taking place in the Sahara Group, which has taken place, the default by one of the largest industrialist houses, UB Group, and a number of scams, Satyam scam, and all this. This makes corporate governance a necessity in the present day world. So, what is corporate governance? Corporate governance is a reflection of the company's culture, that is, the values, beliefs, and the policies, what the company wants to do and what it would like to do it in the future, and relationship with the stakeholders. Stakeholders include the shareholders, the employees, the customers, the banks, governments who are financially connected with the company. Apart from that, corporate governance also includes commitment to values and ethical conduct of business, choosing what is correct, what is right, and what is wrong, and eliminating the wrong, and trying to go ahead with what is good and beneficial to the society. Corporate governance includes disclosure of a lot of information to the about the financial situation of the company, the performance, the ownership, governance of the company, which are an important part of governance, in the corporate governance. Governance means in Latin governere, which means to steer like steering a ship, which gives a direction to the ship. Basically, the top management, that is the board of directors, the chairman, and all the senior management of the company have to steer the ship, which is the company, and they are all the leaders who take part in the corporate governance process. The corporate governance collapses like the Satyam Enron in 2002 have required the corporate governance as a part of their structuring of the companies. The Enron tragedy in 2000 brought in the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which is similar to what we have the SEBI regulations in our country. Standard & Poor has defined corporate governance as the way in which a company organizes and manages itself and ensures that all the financial shareholders receive the share of the company's earnings and assets. So all the financial stakeholders, as I said, could include the shareholders, who are an important part of the corporates, the customers, the suppliers, the banks, the governments, and all the regulators. We have SEBI, which is one of the important regulators as far as the investor protection is concerned, who take care of the investors. All these things, all these are to be taken into account when companies require corporate governance to be made actually. So good governance brings in new investors who are willing to share in the growth of the company. When we are talking in terms of new investors, not only from the country, we are even talking in terms of FDI introduction, where foreign financial institutions are coming into the country. They are willing to share. They would like to look into companies which have good governance practices. Adrian Cadbury, one of the main co-founders as far as corporate governance is concerned, has said that corporate governance is concerned with holding the balance between economic, social goals and between the individual and communal goals. The governance framework is there to encourage the efficient use of resources and equally to require accountability for the stewardship of these resources. The aim is to align as nearly as possible the interest of the individuals, the corporations, and the society. As has been seen by the Adrian Cadbury's definition, it is a composite. It's a composite interest, including the individuals, the corporations, and the society has to be taken. So it's a balance has to be taken into account, to take into account the social goals, economic goals, and even the corporate goals also. Yeah, as far as the OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which takes into account the corporate governance practices throughout the world, there are certain principles which have been defined by OECD. The principles of corporate governance under the G20, that is the 20 countries which have participated in the OECD framework, are the supervisory framework for corporate governance is so as to promote in transparent markets responsibility for regulators and enforcement authorities. As I've already said, that one of the important regulators being SEBI and the National Stock Exchange, they are not the regulators as such, but when the companies get listed on the stock exchange, the National Stock Exchange and the company and the Bombay Stock Exchange, where it gives liquidity to the shareholders to sell across their shares or transfer their shares, they are all the supervisory framework which take into account the corporate governance practices being followed by the companies. Then we have the shareholders' right. Shareholders look for two things as far as any company is concerned. They look for voting rights. When any company, because they are part owners of the company, look for voting rights, and the other is they look for a good amount of dividend, and as far as increase in the valuation of the companies. So ownership rights by way of participating in the elections, by participating in different meetings, you have the shareholders meetings, then by participating in appointment of the auditors, appointment of the directors. Okay, all these form part of the different principles of corporate governance framework. So shareholders' rights include ownership rights, then the transfer of the shares. As I said, the stock exchange, the National Stock Exchange and the Bombay Stock Exchange happen to be the prime stock exchanges in the country where one can sell across or buy the shares. So these things allow liquidity to the shareholders and information to the shareholders. You might have come across in the newspapers every quarterly the company is giving a big list of a half a page information about the companies. These are nothing but the unaudited results which are published on every quarter. At the end of the year, at the end of every year, again information pertaining to the entire year, a comparative statement of the previous year is also given. So what we're talking about is information being given across to the shareholders. Then an important shareholder right is right to vote. As I said, right to vote is there to appoint auditors, approve the annual accounts, appoint the directors either by retiring by rotation or any other directors. So basically, shareholders' right have to be protected as far as the principles, the corporate governance practices are concerned. Then we have the right of institutional investors. We have institutions like the Life Insurance Corporation of India, mutual funds which have invested in the companies. They also have a right to participate in the companies. They've got a right to participate in the company's activities pertaining to the appointment. In fact, with when at the time of lending, the banks or financial institutions insist that they should have a nominee director on the board who takes care of the interests of the company and see that unethical practices do not take place in the companies. So basically, the institutions have a fiduciary duty, then the prohibition of insider trading and treating same class shareholders equally. We've got different classes of shareholders. So all of them have to be treated equally. We have minority shareholders, then the majority shareholders. Minority shareholders cannot be relegated to the background saying that they do not have much voting power. Even the minority shareholders have to be taken into account. Then the role and primacy of the various stakeholders. As I said, the stakeholders include the financial institutions, the shareholders, the regulators, the customers, the employees. Employees also happen to be an important stakeholder as far as the company is concerned. All their interest, it's not only the shareholders' interest has to be taken into account, all the stakeholders' interest has to be taken into account. Then there is the question of transparency. Transparency can be achieved only when a lot of disclosures are made by the corporates to the different stakeholders. It could be to the shareholders, as I said, by way of publishing information on a quarterly basis or on a half-yearly basis. It doesn't matter even if a company wants to disclose information on a monthly basis also. It's only a guideline which has been given that it has to be done on a quarterly basis. Then there is a role and the responsibility of the board of directors. As I said, in any corporate, we have the chairman at the top, then the board of directors are just below them. The shareholders happen to be the appoint the chairman and the board of directors who are part owners of the company, and it is the responsibility of the board of directors to see that the company is carried in an ethical manner, and whatever it wants to make its profits or something in the right way, there is no sort of a bar for it. The board of directors have two duties. They have a fiduciary duty in the form of a trust, and then they are representatives of the company by representing the company itself. So they have lot of faith imposed by the shareholders to run the company. The need for corporate governance. Corporations, as I said, are an aggregation of various stakeholders. As I said, they could be the customers, the employers, the investors, the suppliers, government, society and banks. Fairness to all the stakeholders in its dealing is an important aspect as far as corporate governance is concerned. In global business, the interest of investors are to be taken to attract capital from across various countries. I'm sure all of you know that foreign financial institutions, when it comes to the question of investing in new issues, or when it comes to the question of purchasing shares from the secondary market, do play a very important role. So foreign financial institutions look for companies which have good corporate governance practices. One of the most important and scarce commodity is human capital. To get human capital is very difficult. Okay, you might see a lot of unemployment in the country, but to get the right talent is very difficult for corporates. So the right talent, the right people, and the better ones would look for companies which have good corporate governance practices. Collaboration and joint ventures are also possible when fair practices are followed. Ethics in conduct. Corporate governance is about ethics in conduct of ethical business. Ethics is nothing but a code of values and principles that makes a person choose from between what is right and wrong and keeping aside self-interest. All the stakeholders look into when they are looking for good corporates, either in the terms of investment or looking for an employment, or a supplier looking for supplies, or for a customer looking for the products of those companies. Corporate governance is beyond the legislation. The legal framework, as I've already said, there is no bar for companies being more transparent, giving more disclosures as far as the company's financials are concerned. It need not be on a quarterly basis, it can be on a monthly basis. So it has to go beyond the legislation. Legislation gives certain parameters for which corporates have to follow. But corporate governance extends even beyond the legislation. So as I said, the legal framework gives guidance to the process of corporate governance, but corporate governance is beyond this legislation and can have more what is not given. The mindset and ethical standards of management are of high importance. Boards are accountable to the shareholders and the society at large. Why is good corporate governance important? Good corporate governance is associated with good and prosperous companies. Infosys, it has its policy as far as corporate governance is concerned. It says that corporate governance for Infosys means ensuring maximum shareholder value legally and ethically while ensuring fairness to every stakeholders, that is the customers, employees, investors and the government. So as far as Infosys is concerned, it talks about maximizing the shareholder value. As I said, the shareholder looks for a good amount of dividend and a good amount of appreciation of the shares in the market, that is in the stock exchange. So just because you are taking care of the shareholders doesn't mean that the other stakeholders, that is the investors, the deposit holders, the customers, the government, they can be relegated to the government. Government, in a way, it comes in good corporate governance. Dealing with government means you're filing taxes on time, you're paying duties on time. All these form part of good corporate governances. We have different obligations as far as the corporates are concerned. They have different obligations as far as the to different stakeholders. You've got the obligations towards the society, the national interest. First is the national interest. Projects which are in the interest of the nation are to be taken. You cannot have, a company cannot be formed for the projects which may not be beneficial to the society. So corporates should look for projects which are in the interest of the society as well as it is in the interest of the nation. Political non-alignment. Just because a party comes into power, any corporate should not align with itself and give across donations freely. Donations can be given provided it is within the framework of the law. Legal compliances. As far as corporate governance is concerned, legal compliance is an absolute must. You cannot just deviate from any of the compliances as far as the different regulations given under various acts. You have regulations which are given under the Companies Act. You have got regulations which are given under the SEBI regulations. Then you have the regulations as far as labor is concerned, which includes the Factories Act, the Industrial Disputes Act, then the Trade Unions Act, the Employees Act, the Welfare Acts, that is the Employees Act, the Employees Provident Fund Act, the Bonus Act. All these compliances are to be taken and given a very serious thought when you're talking about good corporate governance. Rule of law, impartial enforcement of law, whether it is an employee, he is to be treated equally without any sort of a caste, creed, religion or any sort of a thing. Honest and ethical conduct of board and senior officers. The senior officers and the board of directors who run the organization, who manage the organization, have to be very ethical. This percolates down from the top to the down. If the board happens to be unethical, so automatically even the people down below it also tend to be unethical. So the senior officers, that is you have the presidents, vice presidents, the general managers, they become an example for the employees down below. You have corporate citizenship, like how we are citizens of the country. The society expects us to be good corporate citizens. Even the society also expects good citizenship, good corporate citizenship from the corporates itself. Corporate citizenship, basically the business are socially responsible for meeting the legal, ethical and economic responsibilities placed on them by the shareholders. Ethical behavior by the corporates, social concerns, social and evil problems. Then we have the corporate social responsibility, limited social objectives. I'm sure all of you are aware, one of the major amendments as far as the Companies Act 2013 is to have some element of the profits towards the CSR activity. That is 2% of the CSR, 2% of the profit should go towards the CSR activities. So, though it is left to the corporates how much of the percentage should be given, but only thing is, as far as the Companies Act 2013 is concerned, it only says that if you are unable to do it, so just report it to the shareholders. Environment friendliness, we're talking about green marketing, recycling of waste products. All these things become an important part as far as the corporates are concerned towards its obligation towards the society. Health and safe working conditions, or the law already permits, as far as the Factories Act is concerned, it talks about giving across clean water to the employees, having a safe and safe workplace in the environment. But beyond that also, it's the corporates which can give a better better working conditions as far as the labor is concerned. Competition. So we have the Competition Commission, which has does not per se stop competition, but it says that competition should exist, but only it should be ethical and it should be in the right way. Trusteeship. Corporates are the trustees of economy for the welfare of the people in general. Accountability is the responsibility of the actions done. So as far as the corporates are concerned, they have an obligation towards the society, they're accountable for it, and they should always be in a manner which they should be in a manner to explain whatever actions they have taken. Effectiveness and the efficiency. Efficiency refers to how well something is done, and effectiveness refers to how useful something is. So corporates are to do whatever their processes are concerned in an efficient and an effective manner. Timely response. Unless information comes on in a timely basis, it becomes redundant. Shareholders, if given information after a couple of years, have no relevance, because the markets keep on fluctuating in such a manner, it sort of precludes, it either persuades a shareholder to get into the market or to get out of the market. Should uphold the name of the country. The corporates, when they become ambassadors, the board of directors or the corporates become ambassadors for different the products are to be served in such a manner, the services are to be given in such a way in other countries that it should set an example for the other corporates also. We have obligations to the investors. As I said, investors who are part owner of this company, they are to receive the bonus on time. If dividend is paid, it has to be in an equal basis. It has to be, transparency should be maintained. Then financial reporting of records has to be there, and shareholders' participation as far as meetings are concerned. Previously, we had the shareholders who had to come to the shareholders meeting at wherever the registered office is concerned. Now shareholders can go through the agenda, then participate as far as the meeting is concerned through e-voting. There is an obligation to the employees for employment practices, fair, merit-based, and it should be non-discriminatory. An equal opportunity employer. You have the Equal Remuneration Act, the ERA. IDA is Industrial Development Disputes Act, is that it prohibits employees from getting into unfair labor practices. Industrial Employment Standing Orders, which gives the conditions which employees and employers have to follow. Then encouraging whistleblowing. Basically, it is to see that wherever unfair practices are being taken up, the unfair practices are reported to the audit subcommittee by a whistleblower, and investigation is done, and such unethical practices are stopped. Human treatment. Merciful, kind, tender, compassionate, gentle, sympathetic and benevolent towards the employees. Participation, we have the workers' participation in management, and then as far as the Industrial Disputes Act is concerned, it gives workers' committees where their ideas are also brought into as far as the general working of the companies are concerned. Empowerment, that is, encourage what they are best in, whether it's an employee, whether it's a labor or a woman worker, encourage them in what best they are. Equality and inclusiveness, we have the protection of the women against sexual harassment at the workplace, so it prevents women being harassed in the workplace. Obligation to the customers. Any customer would like to look at a good quality product and a good after sales service. So it is the obligation of the corporates to see that the customers are also taken care of. Prices should be at affordable prices. Just because you are a monopoly in the market doesn't mean that you can sell across your product at a huge price. Normally good corporates look for a margin and then sell across the product at a reasonably good price which is affordable to them. Then the other thing is customer satisfaction. Any customer would like to have a good after sales and would like to refer the same product to his friends or to his other colleagues. Previously, companies were entering into a listing agreement. Clause 49 of the listing agreement, which pertained to corporate governance, was being followed. This was a sort of a contract between the company and the stock exchanges. SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India, in 2015 brought in new regulations so that not only the two parties, that is the stock exchange and the corporates, could enter into contracts. It also made the regulator to party to it to see that anything happening between the corporates and the stock exchange, it is being regulated by SEBI. Now we have the SEBI Listing Obligations and Disclosure Requirements Regulations 2015. Basically, the regulations prescribe the different disclosure requirements for different types of listed securities. We have the securities pertaining to the equity shares, we have the debentures, different types of preference shares. They could all be the different types of securities. What are the broad features of the regulation? Then what is the applicability of the regulation? Common obligations to be performed by listed equities. What are the quarterly compliances, including the time thereof? As I have said, the disclosure as far as the corporates are concerned are to be done on a quarterly basis as far as the unaudited results are concerned. Unaudited results are to be published in newspapers. These all form part of the SEBI listing regulations. Then events requiring prior intimation, whenever there is a change in the board of directors or whenever there is a change as far as any sort of a major change, it could be selling of a major part of the unit, then such information has to be disclosed to the shareholders. Events requiring intimation within 24 hours of occurrence of the event. Then composition of the board and its committees thereof. We have now what is called as an independent director. Independent directors plays an important role as far as the good corporate governance practices are concerned. We have different committees. We have the audit subcommittee, which takes care of the financials of the companies. Before they are put up to the statutory auditors, the audit subcommittee goes through it and then finally it is placed to the shareholders. The other composition of the board and its committees thereof, the audit subcommittee happens to be an important committee as far as the board is concerned, where all the financial transactions are to be reported to the audit subcommittee before it can be taken up to the board, and the board finally takes up to the shareholders for finally getting its approval. Then we have what is called as a nomination committee as far as the board of directors are concerned. When any sort of an independent director or any director has to be appointed, the nomination committee recommends who is the director who can be appointed onto their board. We have the remuneration committee pertaining to the remuneration, what is to be given to the different directors, that is the whole-time directors, the managing director and senior management personnel. Another important committee, which is the CSR committee, the corporate social responsibility, in terms of section 135, says that any company which is within the limits which have been prescribed under the Companies Act will have to have a CSR committee. This committee should broadly make out a CSR policy and tell what sort of CSR activities to be taken in the year to come. So these are the different committees which are to be constituted and which form part of the corporate governance practices. As far as the board of directors is concerned, the Companies Act says that 1/3 of the total strength of the board shall be permanent, the others directors can retire by rotation. So out of the total strength of the board, if there are 12, then at least 1/3 of the board should have independent directors. These independent directors are those directors who do not have any sort of a connection with the company. Either they are not employed, or they are not shareholders of the major shareholders of the company, or they are not worked with the company, they are not suppliers to the company. All these things form independence to the board, and they are not related to the promoters. They do not sort of they take in these decisions independently, participate in it. So corporate governance talks about having more larger contingent of independent directors. Related party transactions. As far as related party transactions are concerned, the promoters having the relatives or any shareholders who have a major stake in the company participating in any contracts are to be away from it. The agendas of the board meeting are to be circulated to the directors well in advance. Then the agenda to be placed in the upcoming general meetings are to be made out. Some of the important corporate governance practices which have come in the Companies Act, pertaining to the composition of the board of directors, is having a woman on the board. Actually, the board of directors of every listed company shall now be required to at least have one woman director. We have at least roughly about 1500 companies which are listed on the National Stock Exchange, and about 6500 listed on the Bombay Stock Exchange. So all the boards are gearing up, all the companies are gearing up to see that the women directors come onto the board. Actually, the minimum number of independent directors. So if the chairman of the board of directors is a non-executive director, at least 1/3 of its board should be independent. That means that if the chairman happens to be a full-time employee of the company, then at least if the chairman happens to be at least a not a working director, then at least 1/3 of it has to be independent directors. If the chairman is an executive director, that is, he is under full-time employment, at least half of the board has to be independent directors. Limits as to be independent directors. An individual shall not serve as an independent director in more than 7 listed companies. So it basically gives him time to participate in the different board meetings and allows him to give more qualitative time for the boards. Further, any individual who is also serving as a whole-time director in any listed company shall not serve as an independent director in more than 3 listed companies. These are some of the regulations which have been given across in the SEBI listing obligations and disclosure requirements of 2015. The maximum tenure of independent directors. It used to happen that directors, the moment they become a major, that's 18 years, they used to become directors onto the board and continue till they till their death. So to avoid such things to happen, there has been a restriction on the maximum tenure of independent directors. The maximum tenure of an independent director is up to 5 consecutive years, followed by a reappointment for another term of up to 5 consecutive years on passing of a special resolution of the shareholders. When performance evaluation of the independent directors, the nomination committee shall lay down the evaluation committee for performance evaluation of the independent directors. Performance evaluation shall be done by the board of directors and shall form the basis of determination of reappointment of the independent directors. The company shall disclose the criteria for performance evaluation as laid down by the nomination committee in its annual report. Training of independent directors. Independent directors are also new to any organization, so they should know what the company is into, what products they are into, so they should also be given proper training. So training of independent directors shall be done, and that the company shall provide suitable training to independent directors to familiarize them with what sort of rights they have, what sort of duties they have, and what is the nature of the industry in which the company operates, business and model of the company. The company shall disclose the details of such training, what it is imparted in the annual report which is circulated to the shareholders. The key ingredients of the corporate governance are structure and composition of the board of directors. Independent directors, as I said, at least have to be either 1/3 or at least half of it, based on whether a chairman is an executive one or a non-executive one. The board also should have professional people, which includes lawyers, chartered accountants as independent directors. Audit committee, which is an important part of the corporate governance practice, should have at least one independent director onto the board. One member or chairman to have expert knowledge as far as finances are concerned should be there in the audit committee. Then the audit committee to meet the external, what is the role of the audit committee? Basically, the audit committee has to see that it meets the external and the internal auditors once in a year. You have the internal audit being done, which gives the audit's report, which is placed to the board. Before it can be placed to the board, the audit committee should examine what the internal audit report is. Any findings of the external auditor should also be placed to the audit committee. They should examine it before they can put it to the board. To review all the financial statements, we have different financial statements, that the profit loss account, then the balance sheet, which are sent across to the shareholders, all before they are placed to the board, before they are being adopted by the shareholders, are to be placed by the audit committee. So the role of audit committee is to lays more emphasis as far as financial statements are concerned, as far as the financial records are there, the audit part, both the internal and the external audit. Whatever frauds happening in the company are to be monitored by the audit subcommittee. As far as the usage of funds through public issues are concerned, that also should be monitored by the audit committee. The corporates have placed a lot of importance as far as the audit committees are concerned. The listing regulations should include also review and monitor auditors' independence and performance and effectiveness of the audit process. Auditors happen to be, the external auditors especially, happen to be the watchdogs of the company. They they have to be independent. In fact, before being appointed as an auditor, they give a certificate of independence, and they should see that the audit process of the company is being done in a proper, ethical and a proper effective manner. Approval of any subsequent modifications of transactions of the party with related parties have to be taken care. Proper process has to be followed, what is given in the Companies Act 2013. Scrutiny of intercorporate loans and investments have to be done. Valuation of undertakings or assets of the company wherever it is necessary, and evaluation of internal financial controls and risk management systems have to be taken care as both by the audit committee as well as the company in general. Internal audit to be proactive. The Act has not unless it is followed under the Mokara Act, internal audit may not be required, but it's advisable to have an internal audit process parallelly with the external audit also. It should have a clear defined role and be independent and to report to the audit committee. So as far as the findings of the internal audit are concerned, it runs concurrently. It's on a day-to-day basis, and whatever things are there have to be, whatever reports are to be given, should be given across to the audit committees. Legal compliance checklists have to be prepared, and at every board meeting the compliances have to be reported as far as the different departments are concerned to the board of directors. It's usually a practice among the corporates that each department gives compliances of areas in their areas, and then finally the managing director gives across a consolidated compliance saying that all the laws as far as the Companies Act are concerned have been complied with based on the information given by the various heads of the departments. When you have the code of ethics, whistleblower policy, that's vigil mechanism, Whistleblower policy, any unethical practices going on has to be reported to the audit committee. Whistleblower is basically an employee who discloses in good faith any unethical and improper use, any improper practice or alleged wrongful conduct in the audit committees. In writing, he has to give it across. So as far as the whistleblower policy is concerned, under the listing regulation, it has to be placed on the system of how to approach the audit committee should be placed on the websites of the companies. Disclosures, as I said, are required under the listing listing regulations. Related party disclosures by managements. Then you have the contracts and arrangements that also are to be disclosed, apart from what we are talking about, the financial disclosures being made. Then the changes if in accounting policy are also to be disclosed. We have the series of scams in India. We had the Harshad Mehta scam way back in 1992, which involved banks and stock markets nosediving after the reform in 1991. Then we have the transnational companies way back in 1993. Transnational companies were allotting shares at huge discounts and trying to gain control of such companies. We have disappearance of companies whereby in 1994 companies raised about 5,000 crores actually, 25,000 crores by about 3,000 companies, and finally they were not to be seen. So many of the companies even got themselves listed on the stock exchange. They took money from they went to the public issue, took money, and finally they were not to be seen. So this was in the controller of capital issues. We didn't have SEBI then, SEBI which came in subsequently after all these scams came in, started regulating. We had the plantation schemes. Plantation schemes made investors believe for huge returns on the scheme. So investors lost almost about 50,000 crores. They said that, let's say a mango tree which is at 1,000 rupees over a period of 10 years would give almost about 1 lakh or something, which was which was not the real fact. Then we had the lot of non-banking financial companies coming up in 1997. They came and then vanished. Investors lost almost about 50,000 crores. We had mutual funds. Bank and mutual fund companies raised about 15,000 crores, but all flopped. Then we had the IT scam, especially in the Y2K period, and all companies changed, especially in the non-banking financial companies, changed from non-NBFCs to the infotech companies, taking advantage of the technology and all. As late as we had Ketan Parikh way back in 2001, which was based on price rigging and all. We had the worst global frauds as far as Xerox is concerned, accounting fraud showing leases sales, overstated revenues of $6 billion. Then we had the Enron accounting fraud to show increased profits, claimed revenues in 2000 $101 billion. Then WorldCom, it was an accounting fraud of boosting earnings, understated expenses by $74.5 billion, assets boosted up by $11 billion. Then accounting fraud. Then you had the Satyam fraud in India, almost to the tune of 7,100 crores, which showed accounting fraud to show non-existing bank deposits.